Is this album good, bad, or so bad it's good? That's what I want to discuss today when I want to talk about the new album by Lordi called Limited Deadition. If you didn't know, Lordi is a Finnish hard rock and metal band that founded in 1992. The band is fronted by Mr. Lordi, whose real name is Tomi Petteri Putenasu. And this is one of those bands that people might call a gimmick band because they wear these outrageous costumes and they have a big theatrical stage show. I guess a good comparison would be the band GWAR. Oh yeah, they also have a nickname. They call themselves Finnish Monsters. They released their debut album in 2002 called Get Heavy. It was actually pretty successful. It sold over 67,000 copies. It was certified double platinum in Finland. Later on, they released another album called the Arockalypse in 2006, and that song featured Hard Rock Hallelujah, and it won the Eurovision Song Contest, which is pretty big, and the first time that the country of Finland won that award. The sound can be compared to the glam metal bands of the 80s. They have a stage show of a band like W.A.S.P. They have the catchiness and pop sound of a band like Bon Jovi. Their music has elements of power metal, but more on the accessible side. The band is also pretty consistent with releasing albums. Their last album was released in 2024. It was called Screem Writers Guild. I remember I did a short review of it, and I thought it was pretty cool. It had some pretty funny songs. Now it's time to talk about Limited Deadition. This is their 19th studio album. If you're wondering why they have so many albums, it's because a few years ago, they released 7 albums in one day back in 2021 called Collection. But anyway, this new album was released on March 21st, 2025 through Reigning Phoenix Music, and they call it a sibling album to the aforementioned Screem Writers Guild. They consider it to be a heavier album. The album has 16 tracks, but amongst them are short comedy skits, so I'm going to be talking about all of that. The album opens with a skit called SCGXIX, The Hexecutioners. Sounds like a movie trailer for a horror movie that's to be broadcast on TV. Not really funny, but it sets up the next song. The next song is called Legends Are Made of Clichés. This one sounds like some of that 80s hard rock, but with some creepy instrumental sounds, similar to an old horror movie. I thought the song was pretty catchy. It had those big sing-alongable choruses with lots of guitars and keyboards in the background. Kind of reminded me of a typical Alice Cooper song from the late 80s. Something like Constrictor or Raise Your Fist and Yell albums, but for that reason, I thought it was not too bad. After this is another song called Syntax Terror. This one has more of that 80s horror movie synth and some of those big power chords that were also common with 80s metal. This one sounded more like traditional heavy metal, maybe something along the lines of Saxon or Manowar, but with more of a cheesiness factor. You can hear some of those big screams and cheesy fantasy-based lyrics. Song was not too bad, maybe one of the better ones from the album. After this is a song called Skelephant in the Room. It was a complete change of pace. It sounded like those disco rock songs from the 70s that had more of a pop and radio-friendly sound with lots of keyboards. I thought it was kind of strange. It had these weird vocal harmonies, but I guess this band likes to experiment with their music. After this is an interlude called SCGTV's Saturday Night Main Event. It's one of those promotional sound bites for some type of UFC type of cage fight. They mention the cage is on fire. It's only a 20-second interlude. After this is a song called Kill Harmonic Orchestra. It's another one of those songs which is very melodic. It has lots of energy. Some of the guitar riffs were reminiscent of traditional heavy metal, but the sound was filled with lots of keyboards and catchy hooks and melodies, so it was a decent song, very representative of the sound of the album. Then there was a song called Collectible. This is a power ballad of the album. It's about a voodoo store in Harlem, and they sell these collectible action figures, and one of them is a cursed action figure. So that's what the song's all about. It's a soft ballad. It kind of reminds me of those old Alice Cooper ballads from the 70s, and that's what I like about it. It's actually maybe one of the better songs. I thought it was very catchy. Then another skit called SCGTV Monster Squad Action Figures. It's a parody of a commercial for action figures, and they describe different characters and their superpowers, and it wasn't too funny. There was a song called Fangoria. It's about this old magazine about horror movies, and I remember this back in the 80s. I used to buy this magazine a lot. They have a music video that shows like all these covers of the horror movie magazines and shows lots of movies from the 80s. They make references to everything from Friday the 13th. Then there's another part where they make reference to The Evil Dead, and the song is a hard rock song, has lots of horror movie synth, has cool isolated bass guitar, and maybe one of the better songs on the album. It's followed by another song that was a single with a music video called Elizabeth. It's more on the commercial side. It has lots of keyboards, more of a pop-oriented sound. Thought it was okay. Probably not one of the best tracks, but it had a few moments that had some pretty cool drumming, and that's all I have to say about it. Then another skit called SCGTV, The Hexecutioners season finale. It's about a short promo ad for an upcoming episode of a television series. It had a joke, a little funny, but that's about it. After this, another song called Retropolis. It was not too bad. It sounded like 80s glam and metal, very reminiscent of a typical song by a band like Bon Jovi or another similar band, and I thought the guitar solo stood out on that one. Then another song called Frighteousness. This was another ballad. And if you remember before, I said the last ballad reminded me of Alice Cooper in the 70s. Well, this one reminds me more of Alice Cooper in the 70s. Something like Only Women Bleed or something similar. It had a pretty cool AOR chorus, nice guitar solo, more reminiscent of a power ballad from the 80s, and probably one of the better songs. There was one more short skit called SCGTV Crazy Ralph Promo. It sounded like a parody of those old Crazy Eddie commercials from the 80s, which kind of weird because I thought that was just an American thing. I remember that growing up because I grew up in New York, but apparently it's a parody of that, and it's a commercial pushing Monster energy drinks or something like that. It was okay, but not that funny. There are two more songs in the album. The next song is called Limited Deadition, song about the culture of collecting figurines and different things. It's another song that was pretty good, had lots of keyboards, and one of the catchier songs. I would even say one of the better ones. There's one more song in the album called You Might Be Deceased. This had more of a traditional heavy metal sound with more guitar riffs. Still had that very catchy and melodic sound that was in line with the songs on the rest of the album. I thought it was a good song, and it had heavy metal moments, and it had some creepy horror movie moments as well. Now for my final thoughts, I have one big complaint, and that's the short skits are not funny at all. I remember the last album, there was one skit that actually made me laugh out loud, but this album lacked that. Other than that, I thought the songs were good. They were what you would expect, pretty catchy songs, they're fun to listen to. That made the whole album worth listening to. So I would say it's not that bad, it's very cheesy. I wouldn't go into it expecting anything, just some fun, melodic hard rock. I give it 7 out of 10, and I think that's a decent score. If you want to check out my review of Screem Writers Guild, I will stick that right there. It's only a short review. I think I did a 4-minute video or something like that. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Please like this video and all the other good stuff, that same stuff I say at the end of every video. You know what to do. Anyway, I will see you in the next one.